Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Relate to This. I am Jay Tross. I'm sharing the stage, sharing the stage with my pal, my buddy, my friend, my business partner in this venture here, Dr. Siegfried. How are you doing on this evening?
Yeah, I'm doing well. A little sleepy, but I'm doing well.
Listen, man. Listen. Hey, they tell me in this business, sleeping is not an option. Okay, sleeping is not an option. If you want to be heard, you got to be on 24 hours, 7 days a week with this message. So there is no sleeping tonight. Matter of fact, on on one of these episodes, we're gonna just do a
What?
marathon of relate to this. Well, I mean, we just gonna go through 100 questions,
Wow.
and we're just gonna see what comes about,
Mm-mm.
and you never know. We're gonna celebrate for 24 whole hours,
What?
and yeah, I said it, 24 whole hours.
Yeah, I'm gonna pop in from time to time. How about
Right. I just be on here just talking to myself. Well, good evening to each and every one of you. We're glad that you decided to join us on this evening. Remember, subscribe to us and then also comment. Let us know if something was good to you. Comment. Let us know if there's something that you have something in particular that you have a question about, and we wanna answer some of the most intriguing questions that you have. As always, tonight's episode is brought to you by MEI, Making Education Intentional, and so we always like to thank our CEO and owner, Dr. Siegfried Howe, for giving us this space to have this program along with other programs that we produce and operate out there. And so, making education intentional, MEI. So, Dr. Howe, let's go ahead and get this show started tonight. Let's lay the foundation of where we hope to go throughout this episode tonight. You know, in relationships, sometimes depending on and I've seen this really, some relationships that have been that come together. You know how you have that high school sweetheart,
yeah, yeah.
and so your relationship started back in eighth grade, third grade, fifth grade. I mean, and it's you've been together since that time, and now you're 25, 30 years, 35 years into your marriage or relationship. And at some point along the way, you find that there's some spotty boredom that comes along with it, right? And some spotty, like, man, do I, like, I don't like you no more. And some of those different things. So I'm laying this platform for us, this foundation of where we want to go. So I want to jump right into it, and I want you to open our minds and our eyes to this. So my first question to you tonight is, how do you get out of a relationship rut or boredom phase? That's part one to that question, right? So let's just spend time right there. How do you get out of a relationship rut or boredom phase?
First of all, what you doing being bored, man? Like, I mean, there's so many things you can do in a relationship with each other. Why do you have time to be bored? Now, maybe your partner may not be as energetic as you, or maybe they may not be as daring or risque as you. However, I do believe that if you sit down and have a conversation with them and let them know how important it is to spice things up a little, I think that they'll jump on board, especially if you explain to them in a nice, kind, loving way that this is something that is needed in order to keep the interest there. I do not think that if you're high school sweethearts that you would hear the request of your partner and just let it fall on deaf ears unless there's something else secondary going on. some hurt, some trauma, some abuse, or something that makes them not want to cater to you. But if you have a healthy relationship and you are both working on adding value to each other, communication should be one of those things that's paramount. And having that commitment to doing whatever is needed in order for us to reach our life goals together, I think a little bit of change is needed. So, what do you think about that when it comes to, doing that? Now, before you answer, you can do other things like go out on those mystery dates. So do things out of the normal. A lot of times we get caught up in routines. And so if you do things out of normal, pretend like you're picking pretend like one of you all is picking the other one up at a restaurant. So you pretend like you're strangers and you spit your game and see how that game gets you, and do things like that. And go to different types of concerts together, go to on picnics together, and try new restaurants out. You can send each other naughty texts, letting each other know what you can't wait to do. There are things you can do. You shouldn't just sit there and not do anything. But the first thing you should do is to communicate your level of dissatisfaction in that particular situation. And if you were together since you were young, I don't think there's too many topics that you would be scared to bring up anyway.
So, from what I'm hearing you say, is there should never be a time where a couple should be bored.
There is going to be time, but it shouldn't be.
Right.
Because communication, trust, understanding, adding value to each other are the paramount things that keep those relationships moving. And so whenever one partner refuses to try something, it's usually because there's some kind of fear, hurt, or something, or trauma that's stopping them from moving forward with those particular requests. So if you get to the root of it and identify what it is that might be causing the halting, then maybe you can work through
it. So I'm gonna go back. So based on what you're saying, because I'm trying to kind of understand it. So if I feel like I'm bored, you're saying that I should then talk to my significant other about how bored I am, or things that we should or could do as a couple, so that I'm not bored. But
Well, let me address that real fast. Boredom is a lack of a strong mind. So don't talk to your partner about being bored. Talk to your partner about things you want to try, things you want to do. I don't think that your partner should be responsible for your boredom or fixing your boredom, just like your partner should not be responsible for fixing your happiness.
right.
There's certain things that you need to work on yourself. I never get bored because I'm always hyper. My brain is always hyper, and I'm always thinking of the next thing in my head, the next book to write, the next thing to research, the next documentary to watch. And so I never really get bored, and I've never been bored as a kid because I grew up by myself. So my sister is 5.5 years older than me, and so she was always in a different school than I was in, and so I always had to make sure that if I wanted to play, I had to find games in my head. I had to make my own toys. I had to do whatever. And so part of growing up outside of the United States is you don't have access to as many things, which means that you have to improvise.
Right.
So one of the sad parts of growing up in America is because you have access to everything, your mind becomes feeble. So you have kids with a whole library in their hands in the form of a tablet or a phone, and they're talking about they bored. And then they grow up to be adults thinking that the world is supposed to entertain them. Nah, entertain yourself. So if you're a girl and you're bored, find out what you want to do and then communicate that to your partner. If you're a guy and you're bored, find out what is it you need to do or what is it you want to try and then communicate that with your partner. But to just sit there and wait for the next person to do some kind of magic tricks, that's not fair.
Right.
Take care of your own boredom and then bring some value to the relationship.
Okay. All right. No, I'm gonna go with that for now. I might revisit that later because I'm still on the fence.
Okay.
But I absolutely understand exactly what you are saying, which brings me to the follow-up question
Mhm.
of this. The follow-up question is, how do you purposely learn and grow together? Because see, I was bored,
Mhm.
right? I was bored. Then I had the conversation about new things to try. But
Yeah.
the my significant other may not be where I was as far as my um I'm just gonna keep using the word boredom, of course. My boredom. And so how do we then learn and grow together so that we are on the same page as we continue to, you know,
I'll take that question in two forms.
okay.
The first thing is you should always be growing by yourself.
Hmm.
You should always have time for solitude, time for growing independently of your partner. Because if you're going to always bring value to your partner, you must always be growing and learning, or you will run out of things to bring to your partner.
Right.
And so that's one school of thought. If I'm constantly working on myself, I always have something to share with my partner, and we can try that together. Now, I'm going to pause that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you the second scenario. The second scenario is I find things or we find things to do with our partners that we're not good at.
Mm-hmm.
That way we can learn together.
Mm.
And so if I'm not good at basketball, you're not good at basketball, let's try basketball class together. My wife and I went and we took a sewing class together. We both were not good at sewing. And so we learned every week together. And it wasn't her looking at me like, oh, you don't know how to do that? Oh man, that's so easy. And then I'm looking at her and my stuff's not coming out the way it should. Hers coming out perfectly. And now I'm starting to feel resentful.
Right.
Or I know how to play basketball, so I'm trying to teach her how to play basketball. And because she's not learning fast enough, I'm getting angry with her or impatient with her. And it turns out to be a stressful situation. But if both of us are crappy at it and both of us are trying and we can laugh at each other's imperfections and we can help each other, practice with each other and grow together, that is the second school of thought. Now, the reason why I like both of them is because there are situations where I might want to show you a deeper view into who I am.
Right.
So I will bring you into my world now, but I have to understand I need to be patient, I need to be understanding, and I need to take care of your feelings because I love you and I want to make sure that this experience is one that we can continue to grow and share together. And so sometimes you have to be one person that's good, one person bring the other person up. But in some situations, to really, really grow together, you're going to have to both be newbies at something and try something brand new.
Right.
So if you go to one of those escape rooms, or if you go on a murder mystery train or something like that, and you both haven't done it before, then that is a growing situation, and you can get to see each other under a stressful situation. But if I'm an expert and all I do is watch you be stressed and I'm happy and I'm not getting stressed, it's a one-side learning situation.
Got it.
So,
Yeah.
so I believe both sides are good.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. No, I'm with you all the way. In a lot of relationships, or a percentage of relationships, um, there's a lot of complaining that occurs,
Mhm.
and is more complaining than resolution, right? So you've heard it before. I mean, hey, you left the toothpaste, the cap off the toothpaste, or you left the toilet seat up, or,
Mhm.
oh, you didn't make the bed, or, hey, you didn't take the trash out.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of complaining that occurs. My question to you, and I'm not for sure if you can answer this, or if
Mhm.
you want to table it, or you come back to it, because it's so much complaining. There's less positiveness, right? I mean, the positive in the relationship is, hey, good morning, I love you, da 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 da. But then throughout the day, or throughout, the weekend, whatever, you hear more of the complaints, right?
Yeah.
So our listeners, our viewers, want to know, how do you turn relationship complaints into requests for positive change?
All right. So I'm gonna take that from a slightly different aspect.
Hmm.
If you look at it from this standpoint, for every one negative, you're gonna need about 5 positives to counteract that.
Hmm.
So you as a husband, you as a wife, you as a boyfriend, you as a girlfriend, don't have a list of negative things. And I think a lot of us, when we start to complain, we go with, I don't like this, 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 and this about you. And the person feels overwhelmed because I can't take care of all of that right now.
Right.
So, it creates a situation where every time you talk to me, I feel like I'm being attacked.
Mm.
But if for every one negative you give me 5 positives, it's less of a bitter pill. Now, another way to look at it is this: if you give it a love sandwich, I'll give you one loving thing about you. I really like the way you do this.
Mm-hmm.
Then I give you the bitter pill. However, it's hard to accept when you do this because it makes me feel this way.
Right.
And then another love. So you get a love thing, you get love, bitter, love. And so the bottom love of this sandwich will be, how about we work together to find a way to reduce that particular activity?
Right.
So you don't start with a negative, you don't end with a negative. The negative is surrounded by 2 positives. And then the second thing that I want to add to that love sandwich is you use I statements. And I'll explain it to you. When you say, I feel hurt when you do not take the trash out, I'm not saying you always forget to take the trash out. Those are fighting words.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody always does anything. And so if I say, I feel hurt when you don't take the trash out because it makes me feel like you don't value my request. I am showing you that I'm taking ownership for my emotions. And I'm also telling you why. I have not thrown any blame. I have not thrown any shade. I have not made you feel less of a person. But I'm taking responsibility for my emotions, which I have to deal with. But I'm telling you the role you played in creating me, or creating an environment that I then responded to that way. And so using I statements, and then explain why the matter, explain why that particular behavior or lack of behavior or lack of action causes that type of pain or causes that type of feeling. And then make sure you don't turn your complaint into contempt. Complaining is just voicing your opinion about something. Contempt is when you hold hostile feelings about that person because of their action.
Mm-hmm.
Very few relationships come back from contempt because
Right.
things are said contemptuously that you cannot reverse from, or you can't bounce back from.
Right.
And so love sandwiches, for every one negative you give, make sure you have 5 positives. So if every time you say one thing, I don't like the way your breath smells, but then I counteract that, but I sure love the way you dress. And I love the way you this. So now I counteracted that one negative with 5 positives.
Right.
Now I was being facetious about the breath thing. You have to approach that a little better and more tactfully.
Right.
But nonetheless, don't start and end with a negative. Always have it in a sandwich, or always have it surrounded with something loving, so that the pill is a little easier to swallow.
Right. Right. Okay. I want to switch gears
Okay.
on this for the next couple questions. So, in relationships, and probably, I'm not a professional, as I've always stated, so I can't give you statistics on this or not. But I'm gonna go from a male perspective. In a lot of relationships, males are the ones who want to have sex most of the time. More than less, right? Because that's our connection kind of thing, right? So, and it can be female too. It can be either way, right?
Yeah.
So the question that comes out of this one is, how do you get on the same page when one person wants more sex?
Okay, I'm going to break that down as easily as possible. I was doing a seminar last year, and one of the ladies was saying, "My husband always want a lot of sex, and I'm not always down with that. What do I do?" So I asked him, "Well, how often do you have sex?" And I said, "If you don't mind." She's like, "Once a month." I said, "Okay, all right. So let's address it from this standpoint. Do you like to talk to your husband on a regular basis? Yes. Would you be hurt if he did not talk to you on a regular basis? Yes. How often do you want to talk to your husband? As much as possible." I said, "So suppose he said to you, I don't want to talk to you, but once a month. How would you feel in that relationship?" She said, "I feel kind of bad because I think that he's being selfish because he doesn't want to talk to me and listen to me." I said, the way you feel about talking is the way men feel about sex. And so when I said it like that, it changed the dynamic. So now it's no longer a chore. I want him to talk to me because that's how I get acclimated to sex. That's how I feel affection. That's how I feel love. And he wants to have sex so he can show me how he feels about me. And so when has it been fair for women to get their communication, which is their affirmation of love, and men can't get their sex, which is their affirmation of love? And so when you look at it from that perspective, and you go back to what I always say, always try to add value to your partner. So
Right.
if adding value to my partner means listening to them while they speak, then I do that. If adding value to my partner means having sex even when I don't want to, maybe I need to find ways to want to more.
Right.
You muted. Okay.
All right. So then the follow up, the follow up to that is, and I like the way that you explained it, right? I like the way that you broke it down, where the lady, said, once a month, but I want him to talk to me every day, maybe even 4 or 5 hours a day, right? Or all day, or whenever I see him in passing, this is the conversation. Then like where you put it, like, okay, well, what if we flip the script? And that conversation, he says, I just want to talk to you once a quarter, or whatever, you know what I mean? So with that being said, after pregnancy and babies and small kids and all of these different things that occur throughout the relationship that spans over time, and we're still on the same wavelength of talking about sexual activity
Mhm.
within the relationship. How do couples reconnect sexually after a pregnancy, after the babies, and having small kids or even older kids, in the home? How does that reconnection occur?
Well, unfortunately, when you're younger and you don't have kids, you can get it whenever the urge hits. The world is your oyster.
Hmm.
When you have kids, for some reason, they seem to wake up right as it's almost like they know that something's about to occur, and they wake up at that point in time. And so it takes some flexibility. If you're a male, you have to understand that a mother's um, urge is to take care of her baby. So once she starts to hear that crying, you might be able to ignore it, but she cannot. And so you're going to have to be a little bit more understanding. Now, that being said, women, men, men are less sensitive to that crying, especially when that urge hits. And so you're going to have to try and figure a way to tune it out, especially if you're in the middle of it. Try and, find a way to end quicker or find a way to come back and continue. And a lot of times coming back and continue is difficult, especially if the baby's been crying for 10, 20 minutes.
Right.
The mood is basically gone, you know, because, that's just the way it is. And so schedule times, have people to watch your kids so you can do so. I don't know if I talked about the 222 here, and I like to call it the 222
Hmm.
here. But basically, every 2 days, make sure we connect by talking. That gets the communication going. But every 2 weeks, we need to go away for a date. Go try and get some type of date. But then every 2 months, we need to make sure that we go to a hotel and overnight without the kid.
Hmm.
That way we can reconnect, because one of the things that happens a lot in relationships is you're all lovey-dovey before the kids. Once the kids come, the attention switches from the husband to the kids, and now the husband feels neglected, so now all of a sudden he does more work, more overtime, more everything.
Right.
And then when the kids grow up and leave the house, now the two adults are stuck there. They have nothing in common, because she was all about the kids, he was all about the work and business and stuff, and now there's nothing left between them. So what I normally say is, your first priority is not to your kids, it's to each other.
Hmm.
Because after the kids are gone, you still have a relationship you're trying to keep building on, and you still have dreams and memories that goals and visions and things that you want to achieve. And it's going to be hard to do that if you don't have that connection still there. And so you schedule time. You opt in for quickies. Like you get it when you can. um, you talk about when is the best time to get it. And so both parties need to be actively talking about, what about early morning? What about late at night? What about this, that, and try different things. Um, you still got to touch each other, kiss each other and stuff. So even if the kid is up, find a way to just cuddle and, be a family and still touch, but it doesn't have to be necessarily essential touch that leads to sex, but just to let that person know they're desirable. A lot of women don't feel desirable after they have kids. And so, let whatever your wife's love language is or your partner's love language is, make sure that you appeal to that love language so that they know that you still are attracted to them, not just mentally, but physically. Um, Music, find music to kind of keep things kind of spicy, and songs that got each other in the mood before may still work. And so, you might have that song, and when you play that song, okay, let me go put the baby down real fast. I'll be right back.
Right. Right. Right.
Situation. So find ways to keep that physical connection and the emotional and that mental connection going. And don't forget the spiritual also.
Right. So I have one more question for tonight. It's following up on the 222.
Uh-huh.
Just following up on the 222. And I want you to kind of delve into it a little deeper than just that, because in a lot of relationships, you do have you have the opposites attract, right?
Hmm.
That whole theory, and so you have one person who always love to have fun, and then you have the other one who's not necessarily as active or as playful, whatever the case may be. And when you talk about the 222, what are how can you creatively infuse more fun and playfulness even in the midst of life demands, as you mentioned, right? Kids come,
Hmm.
work demands, or school demands, or even your church demands, and you have all of these different things that occur, right? But how can you infuse more fun and playfulness in that relationship even in the midst of life's demands?
Okay. One thing I like to tell my clients is you write a list of 10 things you want to do. Have a bucket list. And you can do a short-term bucket list. I'm not talking necessarily about a lifelong bucket list, but if you have a list of things you want to try. So you have one, your partner has one, and you take turns picking one every time you go out. And so, for example, the first two in 2222 is talking and connecting every 2 days, right? So maybe you can talk about your bucket list and you see what's similar. The second two, when you go out on a date, maybe that's not an eating date. Maybe that's a date where you go out and try something on your bucket list. So if one partner tries it 1 week, 2 weeks from now, the other partner tries something on their list. And so you alternate. So it's not one person hogging the activities. Because a lot of times, the most outgoing person is the one who says, "Oh, let's go out and do this," and the other person's like, "Yeah, let's just stay home."
Mm-hmm.
But if we know we're alternating it, then you know that in 2 weeks you get to pick whatever you want, and so let's just go with the flow and not argue and fuss and fight about what I don't want to do this now because suppose that person don't want to do yours in 2 weeks. So
Right.
if you're accommodating with each other, then that is something that you can add value to each other. And the third two is every 2 months you go and overnight. So while you overnighting without the kids, maybe one of the things you can do is find a location that's close to one of the things that you all both want to do. And you do it and then you overnight. So you
Right.
get a two for it. And then the final two, which is every 2 years, go on a vacation, probably with yourself. Now, if you have young kids, you may not want to do that, but make sure that while you're on that vacation, that you designate time to get some fun and activities in with each other. And like I said, that list of things that you both want to do is something that goes a long way in keeping the relationship spicy, getting people out their comfort zone. Because believe it or not, you may not want to try something on your partner's list, but that's what's making you a boring person.
Right.
If I'm all active, sometimes it's nice to sit down and read a book or play a game or do something that's not in my comfort zone. That's how you stretch and grow into a better person. And somebody who's an introvert, by doing some stuff that's kind of extroverted or outdoorsy, then you might stretch yourself into a better person.
Mm.
And so because you don't like doing it, that don't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you may not do it as often.
Right.
But you have to be willing to try new things, especially once again, if you're adding value to your partner.
Wow. Wow. Wow, Dr. Siegfried, as once again, you open our minds, and it asks us the question: can we relate to this? You know what I mean? Can we relate to the relationship changes, the complaints versus the positive changes? Can we relate to purposely learning to grow together? I mean, can we relate to having that closeness in our relationship where one wants more than the other as relates to sexual activity. And I mean, can we really relate to each other in the midst of life demands where we find some fun and love and playfulness within a relationship? These are all the questions that people are asking out in the world, and they're asking other people, can you relate to what's happening in my relationship? Can you relate to all these struggles I'm having, all the things I'm going? Can somebody hear me? Can you hear me now, if you will? And so we appreciate you once again for setting this platform for us, as always in these episodes of Relate to This. And we look forward to our next episode. Hopefully, someone will put something in the chat that, hey, I need to relate to something. I want to know if somebody's going through what I'm going through with this particular situation, and maybe we can look at some of those questions as we move forward as well. So once again, we thank our listening and our viewing audience for being with us on this evening. And we end this show as we do everyone. Can you relate to this? Good night, and we'll see you soon.
Good night.